Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having an absolutely fantabulous day. I hope if you haven't had pizza today, hopefully this shirt will help you imagine the taste and texture of pizza, and hopefully that can somewhat make up for the lack of it physically being there on your taste buds. And God just performed a miracle because I have one like, despite YouTube saying I have zero viewers. So either someone invisible clicked the like button or the like button clicked itself. I don't know. You guys tell me. Jungle Running is here. Hello there. What's been some cool happenings in your life? And if there haven't been, are there any cool things coming up? Let me make sure my microphone is okay. Good. Good. We're all here. Um Honestly, I kind of scrambled together to do this live stream at the last minute, so I don't know if I'll have anything interesting to say, so I'm hoping you guys have some super cool stories to get things going. Well, no, I stand corrected. I just got back from Vacation Bible School this past Thursday, and it was quite fun. The water balloon fight was nice, and I felt like I don't know how to put this into words, but it was really, really cool to have. A lot of the young people seemed like they really, really trusted me a lot and um, wanted to confide some of their stories, and it was really, really refreshing. But in general, I love surfing. I love making a difference. Sometimes it can be hard to tell if you've really made a difference at Vacation Bible School or not because it's so oriented towards much younger audiences, and they're not always as forward as like, oh, hey, Paul, oh my gosh, you said something that really changed my life. Like, you don't really get that a whole lot from people that are like probably under the age of 13. You don't really get that a whole lot, but it was still fun. The songs were great. The the theme was great. I won't say it just in case that's too much personal information. Uh, I also liked how the leaders of the groups were incorporated into some of the games. So, for example, there was one game where the three of us that were the leaders of our team, goodness knows we needed way more than just one, were split off, and the kids were divided into three different groups. And they were asked using only, I think it was a hula hoop, toilet paper, pipe cleaners, and rubber bands to make costumes for each individual leader. And they decided they wanted to make me a wedding dress. And surprisingly, it wasn't half bad, like for being cobbled together in about 10 minutes by a bunch of, I think, 11-year-olds, like 9 and 11-year-olds, like they had some pretty good artistic skill. And we even had like this pageant at the end where like me and the other two leaders that were being dressed up would kind of like walk down the walkway. And the kids had even made this like bouquet of roses and a balloon. I don't know what the balloon was for. And they said, toss it to people. And then I kind of jokingly walked over to one of the girls and I said, because she also made a wedding ring, and I said, you can give this to your future husband. She's like, no, I don't want to get that kind of ring. But just imagine if that was real. Like, wouldn't that be so funny if an 11-year-old made a fake ring for a pageant, then decided to keep it and kept it for all of those years until she finally met the man of her dreams, and then she decided to propose, saying, I made this wedding ring when I was 11 years old. That would be so funny if that was the case. If you guys can think of anyone that does that, let me know, because that genuinely cracked me up. I've also been playing through Sonic Frontiers. Not my first time playing it, but I have gotten much farther than I did on Switch 1. because I have the definitive edition on the Switch 2. And while there's not really anything about it that screams, "Oh, this is so definitive." There are moments when the game looks really darn good, and it's actually quite a lot of fun. I don't know what they did to make things better, but it seems like a lot of my biggest problems when I played it on Switch 1 were alleviated. Like, I thought the navigation system was absolutely terrible in the original version, and somehow they made it better. I think like they made like these pillars of light and more legible um, destination markers. Because I think like when I originally played the game, I thought that it was too hard to navigate the world and figure out where I was supposed to go. And this time around, it wasn't half bad. Let me know if you guys can hear me all right, because I don't know how I sound coming out of this microphone, especially because I've got the fan on behind me. Uh, I figured out. Oh, good. Thank you, Jungle Running. I also figured out that I will be going back to a water park from a previous year. Sometime in November, I think it'll be either the 8th or the 15th. That'll be like a mini vacation. And I say it's a mini vacation because I've got a couple of friends in me, some from out of state, that we're all going to meet up and go to the water park together. But that's all we're doing. We're not like having a huge staycation or anything like that. But hey, you know what? Water parks are some of my favorite places to be. So I'm, of course, excited by default. You know, prior to this live stream, I wasn't exactly in the best emotional state. I had been experiencing some difficulties, and I'm not sure how much of it I want to talk about just yet. But I was thinking that I was on the verge of going back into depression, and it was a scary thought. But I think for me, I think something that I've noticed, especially with this live stream, is that I seem to be the type of person who, if I'm able to verbalize another emotion that's more powerful, sometimes it can overtake another one, but like in a good way. Like obviously you get the concept of escapism. Like a lot of people will like play video games or watch movies as a form of like, oh, get me away from my problems. I'll just escape to a fantasy world. For me, I think in my case, if someone were to ask me, Paul, how are you doing? And the honest answer is, oh my gosh, I've got so much going on. But then I realized I don't actually want to talk about it. So instead of answering the question directly, I talk about something else that's going on in my life instead. So I remember last week I was feeling pretty miserable. And I ended up, when people asked me, how are you doing? Instead of saying, "Oh man, this thing that I don't want to talk about with you guys is bothering me so much," instead I said, "Hey, I am so looking forward to Vacation Bible School." So as literally as I was talking, I started feeling better because I was talking about other things in my life that were going on, that were much happier. And so as a result, I feel better by virtue of just talking about other good things that were going on in my life, which I don't know how many people are watching this at the moment, but maybe it's a blessing that that we've only had 2 messages so far, is because God wanted me to blab about all these other things going on in my life. So uh, thank you, silent people, for lack of a better word, I guess. As far as upcoming videos, I wanted to let you guys know that depending on how fast I can beat Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition, the next video will be either a review of that game, or it'll be a collection of the demo videos from Ocarina of Time Master Quest. Because as far as I'm aware, there's only 2 other videos on all of YouTube that have even the slightest semblance of that idea of like, look at all these bonus videos in Master Quest, let's compile them. But I'm pretty sure the last one that came out was like 13 years old. And so I don't think it was able to fit the whole screen. I don't think it was in HD. And it had all the pauses that those videos did in Master Quest, like, waiting a really long time for the Nintendo logo to disappear, having the GameCube logo appear at the start of every single video. And because I didn't want to just be a copycat, I wanted this to really stand out. I decided that I would edit out some of those tiny little pauses so that it would flow slightly better. Or at least that's what I thought going into it. But then when I did the math, it turned out that I actually cut out roughly a minute and a half to 2 minutes worth of footage because the pauses were going on for that long. So I guess Nintendo just really wanted to waste people's time in that game. Plus, I also figure with Nintendo giving no indication that they're ever going to put Master Quest on Nintendo Classics, I figure, you know what? Maybe if I post this video, that'll prevent people from buying Master Quest for however much it goes on the secondhand market, because they'll be like, well, the only good thing about Master Quest on the GameCube are those demo videos. Why not just play the 3DS version? Because the 3DS version has all those other quality of life improvements. Like, sure, it's technically harder because the enemies hit harder and you have less defense. But in every other way, um, Master Quest is clearly much better on the 3DS. So hopefully this can help people have better budgeting skills. There's also the possibility that I might have a collaboration with another Catholic website I think it's called Catholic 365. I got an email invitation saying like, hey, maybe you can post about your channel on here to get more views. And I have to admit, I had a bit of mixed feelings about that. On one hand, I was like, oh, okay, that's neat that there's like a place for a bunch of Catholic creators to come together and share their stuff. And then I thought, wait, really? You're telling me that if my channel all of a sudden blows up overnight, it's because people saw my posts on something else and didn't just see my stuff at face value? I don't know. Makes me feel kind of sketchy. Like, I've heard this saying that sometimes people won't click on a video just because they don't like the thumbnail. And then I've heard other people say, like, oh, it's got to be engaging for like the first 10 seconds. And I honestly don't like to pander to that kind of stuff. Which is why I was so mad when the meme happened, because the meme was pandering to this idea of, hey, you know what, I'm not going to get into that again. I've changed my mind. Let's talk about something else. I'm just hoping that if the admins approve me for this new Catholic program, that people will say, I discovered your channel on its own merits and not just because of a meme or, like, I don't know, maybe you said the word sus in there and that reminds me of Among Us. And so therefore it's a 10 out of 10 video. Like, I don't know. I don't think I'd feel very comfortable with that. But one thing I have been really happy about on my channel recently is that it seems like the people that come to my live streams genuinely engage with the content in a natural way. And I really appreciate I forgot where I was going with that. Ugh. I was trying to compliment you guys, but maybe I'm just not good at this stuff. Another thing I was thinking about recently was, and I guess this is pivoting more to like the explicitly Catholic stuff. I was thinking about how Protestants have this doctrine called sola fide, which means Bible alone in Latin. Which is ironic because, or not Bible alone, sorry, that's sola scriptura, faith alone. Which is kind of ironic because the premise of faith alone is usually paired with sola scriptura, which means Bible alone. But where in the Bible does it actually say faith alone? Well, I know a famous apologist who actually looked up how many times does it say in the Bible the phrase faith alone. Turns out it does say that. In fact, I'll look it up right now. Not by faith alone. James. I think it's in the book of James. Yeah, it says, "You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone." So there you go. The one time the phrase faith alone appears in the Bible is denouncing it. But then I was thinking, a long time ago when I was on Facebook, I really wanted to make a Facebook note talking about all the instances where the Gospel of Matthew by itself debunks quite a lot of Protestant ideologies, and that's just one book of the Bible. And I was thinking about all the times that the Gospel of Matthew talks against Protestant ideologies. But here's the thing, a lot of it is subtle. Like, you have to take it in context with everything else. So for example, Jesus says, "Whoever hears these words of mine and do not act on them are like a fool whose house was built on sand, and the house was totally destroyed when the winds came by." So then the question would be, well, we have been listening to your words. What haven't we been doing? Well, the thing is, there's a lot of Jesus's words that I think people put their own interpretation on, and they end up actually not listening to his words at all. For example, there's a verse in the Gospel of Matthew, and again, gotta love Matthew, where Jesus, it says at the end of time, he divides the sheep and the goats. And to the goats, what would you, if you were a sola fide believer right now, what would be your gut impulse of like, what is the first thing Jesus is going to say? "You of little faith, how could you have not professed your love in me and confessed me as your personal love and savior?" Right? Wrong, because that is not what Jesus says. Instead, he says, "You didn't give me food, you didn't give me a drink, you let me run around stark naked, you threw me in prison, and you let me die of sickness. So because you were wicked, you didn't do good deeds. Therefore, be thrown into the eternal fire that was prepared for the devil." He didn't say anything about faith. In fact, I don't even think he really tried really hard to think about himself all that much at all. Because he didn't even say, how do I word this? The wicked people wondered, "We didn't see you at all. What are you talking about?" And he said, you didn't serve other people, so you didn't serve me. So faith, sometimes I guess people could see it as like believing. And if Jesus is saying you need to do something, then we can't be justified or saved by faith alone. There was another conversation where the rich man came, or not the rich man, the lawyer. I always get those two mixed up. One of the two came up to Jesus and he said, what must I do to be saved? And the first thing Jesus says is, you know the commandments. And this is what's so funny is of the commandments that Jesus quoted in those moments, there was really only one that talked about faith. And all the others are stuff like honor your mother and father, an act of doing. You shall not steal. You shall not commit adultery. Heck, if you look at the structure of the 10 Commandments as a whole, this was meant to be like the big thing. Like, follow these 10 commandments. And that is like what all of the law up to that point had focused on. There's only 3 commandments that explicitly talk about God. The remaining 7 are about loving your neighbors. The fact that God puts more emphasis on the people than he does on himself shows that good works are inherently a very, very good thing. Obviously, we don't believe that good works alone are enough to save a person. Obviously, you do need faith. You know, it said Abraham was reckoned because of his faith. Obviously, we Catholics don't deny that. But there are other books in the Bible that talk about Abraham's works. A lot of sola fide believers will take those passages in Romans where it talks about Abraham's faith and pretend that those are the only things that St. Paul writes about Abraham, when in reality, he wrote quite a lot more. Think about this as well. In not really so much a parable, more so a story where Jesus talks about the rich man and Lazarus. I don't think this is in the Gospel of Matthew, so this might defeat my point of it's all in Matthew. I think this is actually in Luke. It doesn't actually say a whole lot about why the rich man ended up in Hades. It doesn't say a whole lot about why Lazarus ended up in the like pre-heaven heaven of that time period. But what it does say is that in life, the rich man had a lot and Lazarus had hardly anything. And I think it was either a priest or a deacon at Mass giving some commentary on that passage, saying it might not have been that the rich man was bad, but that he wasn't doing enough good. Because he said sometimes the worst evil in the world is doing the wrong good. Like, you could follow all the commandments all you want, but if you're not like serving those in need, then what's the point? You know, Jesus talked about that with the Pharisees. He said, you honor me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. Clearly, they had faith. You know, they believed the law wholeheartedly. And yet, despite their faith, oh, the sola fide people are going to have a field day with this one. Despite the faith of the Pharisees, what did Jesus say to them? He said, you brood of vipers, you hypocrites, you children of hell. He realized that they weren't acting out the law, and that's why he was condemning so many of them. Again, going back to the rich man, the rich man said, you know, I have kept all these commandments. What else do I have left? Now, one could argue if you were a sola fide believer, then the logical next step would be for Jesus to say, profess your love to me. You know, just right now. Admit that I'm the Son of God. Admit that I'm the Savior. Boom. What does Jesus say instead? Go, sell all your possessions, and then come follow me. If it was really faith alone, why would he have given a commandment to take action? And then it said, the rich man went away grieving, for he had many possessions. And then Jesus responded, It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. And that goes to show you that um, Jesus is very much a commander of doing, not necessarily just believing. When he was about to ascend into heaven, he said to his apostles, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And the word disciple basically means students. And it said that the apostles shared everything that they had. They were doing, they were sharing, they weren't just believing. Because let's say hypothetically that sola fide is true. What would you be believing in that wouldn't require works? You'd believe that Jesus died for our sins. Okay, cool, cool. But there's way more to Jesus's life than the cross. Obviously, the cross was the culmination of everything Jesus talked about. But there was so much more to it. Jesus was also a teacher. Jesus served. He flat out said, "I have come not to be served, but to serve." To him, helping people was an active part of his life. And he flat out told his disciples on several occasions that he was setting an example for how they could live. Yes, he emphasized believing in him was very important. That's obviously not in question. But he wanted them to show love. In fact, there's another verse in, I think it's Corinthians, where St. Paul talks about faith, hope, and love. To the sola fide people, they'd probably say, oh, well, obviously St. Paul's going to mention faith in there. But what does St. Paul say instead? The greatest of these is love. So there you go. That was actually an idea I had for a book that I was going to write. I was going to talk about all the instances where the Bible mentioned love. I don't remember why I decided to scrap that, but I think we've established a bit of a pattern, and that's that a lot of the books that I've actually written are not published. And I don't plan on publishing any more books besides the one I already did. I think it's just because, like, I feel like I'm a better speaker than I am a writer. And when I look back at some of my writings, it seriously makes me cringe so much. Like, I remember I got an email a couple of weeks ago from someone who, and it was in my spam folder, so I don't know, maybe the person was messing with me, but he said, "Paul, your book is so great that we would love it if this could be put into a cinema." And so there were a couple of things that were going through my mind when I heard that. Also, welcome into the other person who's viewing. First off, I said, "Why did it take you?" I didn't say this. I said this in my head. I said, "Why did it take you so long? I'm pretty sure I submitted that book to you like many, many years ago." The second thing I said was, "You thought that book was worthy of submission to put in the theater? Heck no. Oh my gosh, that has way more plot holes than anything people complain about on the internet. Like, you say things like Deltarune and Harry Potter have plot holes. You should read my books." But I've also been thinking about the prodigal son. The reason why that's been on my mind a whole lot lately is because, as I've alluded to earlier in the live stream, I haven't been doing the best lately. And a lot of it has to do with misunderstandings between me and a friend, which tends to happen a lot. And so I started thinking about all the times that I've been on the receiving end of someone hurting me, and what goes through my head when the person apologizes. And so I started thinking about the parable of the prodigal son and about all of the lessons that I've heard from priests about what that parable is really trying to say when looking at it from the context of the Jews. First off, The son says, "Give me your share of the inheritance." Now, from a modern day perspective, we don't really see that as that big of a deal. Like, oh, okay, you just want your inheritance early. So what? The thing is, in that time period, you only received the inheritance after the father was dead. So he wished his father was dead. Then it said he went and he squandered his inheritance on stuff like prostitution. So essentially, he was in a state of like extreme mortal sin. At one point, it said he even associated himself with pigs, which, again, in the Jewish law, that was considered unclean. But then it says, as he was still a long way off, the father saw him and ran to his son. Apparently, in Jewish society, it was unheard of for fathers to run. I think part of it was because of the outfits that they wore. It just made it difficult to run to begin with. Um, Second off, this idea that the father did not wait for the son to come all the way to the gates of the house, but rather he took the initiative. And as the son was repenting, the father acted almost as though he didn't hear the confession. Instead, he was rejoicing and he threw a celebration, which I think I was told that it was like akin to a wedding celebration. And that's kind of how I feel whenever I have to forgive a friend. Is I feel like I don't really want to think about all the hurtful things that you did. I don't want to dwell on that. I just want to celebrate the fact that you're back. And then you get to the other son, and he doesn't even want to join the party. And here's another thing that was unusual for the time period. The father himself was pleading with the son to come back. And the son was mad that even though he had served his father the whole time, he never received all that great of stuff. The father said, "You have been with me this whole time. Everything that I have is yours." Now, in context, I don't think we realize the gravity of what that means. But I believe that it's trying to talk to those of us who never slipped into mortal sin and were righteous all of our lives. And that somehow we think that God owes us some kind of special treatment. Like, oh, well, when we get to heaven, because we never sinned, we're going to get this giant throne and everyone's going to be praising us, saying, "Oh my gosh, you're the best of humans." When in reality, what did Jesus actually say? Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. So the son that squandered his inheritance, ate pig food, and went around with prostitutes was honored because he realized that he was a fool. He even said, "I am no longer worthy to be called your son." He didn't even need to go back to the father for that matter. But yet, he chose to realize, yeah, I don't deserve this. And yet, the father insisted that he receive a welcome back party. And the son was ungrateful for all that the father was already giving him. Another thing that I noticed about this passage is lately something I've been trying to tell people is that I think we underestimate the power and the intensity of God's forgiveness. As we know, God wants to forgive us way, way, way more than we want to actually be forgiven. In fact, some Bible verses may even suggest that God forgives us even before we ask for forgiveness because he knows that we're going to do it eventually. Yo, it's Lodo. Welcome in. Oh, by the way, I think it was either you or Noah. Actually, now that I think about it, it was probably Noah. One of you made a comment on one of my videos and I accidentally deleted it. So If it was you, I'm sorry. Um, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it was Noah because he said he was happy that they got rid of the Islamic chanting in Ocarina of Time, and now that I think about it, that's a bit out of character for you in particular. I don't think that would be something you'd be complaining about. Yeah, so the reason why you haven't seen me or heard me talk in a long time is because a couple of weeks ago, I had a power outage, or not a power outage, an internet outage. So I wasn't really able to do anything on the internet, and even if I wasn't able to live stream because I was just going to the gym, and that would have really disrupted the customers. And then there were, a couple of things going on with my friends that I don't know how long you've been here, but early on in the stream, I mentioned that I've not been feeling the greatest. And yeah, I did upload my videos at the gym. Yeah, I also thought the chant was cool. I actually I don't think you've been here long enough to know this, but I actually made a video quite a few years ago all about the Fire Temple music, with footage from the original Nintendo 64 version that had the chanting, talking about my Catholic thoughts on it. What's wrong? Let me see if I can put this in simple terms. Basically, a friend and I got into a discussion, and we ended up both saying things that hurt the other person. But she didn't realize that well, it's over with now, so I don't know if I need to re-talk about it per se. But basically what happened was she didn't realize that she had also made a mistake. Like the way she talked made it out like I was the only one who was saying things that hurt her, and she didn't acknowledge her own culpability. So then when I pointed that out to her, she said sorry. And then we had another dispute, and the exact same thing happened where she didn't realize that, hey, you know what? It takes two in these instances. That maybe you said something that wasn't too charitable either. So now I'm just waiting for an email response. But I feel better than I did about the previous interaction because with the previous interaction, I'm trying to remember what was different. Well, that's why I was talking about the prodigal son that whole time before you showed up. Is I feel like I really want my friends to see me as like a human version of the portrayal of the father in that parable. Is someone who is so desperate to forgive that he doesn't even really want to hear an explanation. I remember the previous time this friend apologized to me. She did send quite a lot of words in her apology. And I honestly wasn't paying too much attention to those words. And I know that sounds rude, but I mean that in the most charitable way possible. Is I didn't care about all of the extra flourishes in her apology. I could tell that she was sincere, and that's really all I needed. And I think that's how God is. Like I don't think he needs all of our fancy words for a confession. I think all we really need to do is just go to a priest, say, "Hey, I did this," and receive the absolution. It's really as simple as that. Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. Sometimes people have to step back from a situation, cool down, and then figure that out. Yo, it's Noah. Welcome back, Noah. Speaking of which, how's your channel doing? I'm hoping that I can check it out sometime in the near future. I had just completely forgotten what your new name was. So before I forget, I'm gonna go click on that right now so that I can pull it up on a second window so that I can look at it later. But I was actually talking about you earlier. I was saying that I accidentally deleted one of your comments on my videos, even though I didn't mean to. I actually wanted to approve your comment. It was the one on my Master Quest review where you said that you liked the fact that Master Quest removed the chanting. And I was going to say that I made a video on this channel. It was quite a few years ago, so it's probably dated in a few areas, but I gave a Catholic perspective on why I liked the chanting and feel kind of sad that it was removed. Because, I mean, like, even if I wasn't a Catholic, I think, like, I still prefer the chanting just from a musical standpoint. Like, it just sounds so much better than the synthetic stuff that Koji Kondo replaced it with. So, wait, was it a different Noah then? Oh, that's what you meant, just not Islam. Okay, I get it. For your last relationship, it took a year and some change to realize your faults. Yeah, no, as soon as she pointed out my faults, I did apologize. Because I think we often think about our own wants and desires more than we think about how it's going to affect other people. And that's been something I've been struggling with my entire life. Is I've never been a naturally empathetic person. Oh, thank you, David. I really appreciate the self-reflecting comment. I know that makes me sound like a psychopath, but there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. I've always been good at sympathy, but not empathy. Empathy is feeling people's emotions on such a deep level that you treat them as though they're your own emotions. So when someone is sad, you become sad. Sympathy is when you're experiencing the emotion with the person. So say like let me give you a hypothetical example. Let's say that someone breaks their arm. I have never broken a bone before, unless if you count a broken heart, but I don't think that counts. Because I've never broken a bone, I have no clue what it feels like to go through that kind of pain. But when I hear people talk about breaking bones, I will feel sad for that person and say, oh no, that's a real shame that you broke a bone. I hope that you get better and let me know if there's anything I can do for you. An empathetic person would likely not only be sad for the person who broke the bone, but genuinely might like have trouble moving whatever part of the body was broken, or flinching in pain, or forgetting that person's own emotions because they're so busy being absorbed in the broken bone person's pain. That's true empathy. Yeah, no, empathy is very hard and not everyone can do it, but I think those of us who are faithful can at least try to be empathetic. And, at the end of the day, that's why we call ourselves practicing Catholics, not perfect, because none of us are going to get it 100% right. And that's what the sacraments are for. There's a Shakespeare/scripture quote. Okay, that's similar. Feast and the world laughs with you. Fast and the world will abandon you. I honestly don't really know what that means. So if you have an explanation, I'd love to hear it. I've never been good at poetry. Like people have said I'm good at writing poetry, but I've never been good at like understanding others as poetry, except for Harry Potter. I really like the poetry that J.K. Rowling uses, but like apart from her, it's usually very difficult for me to take a poem and not be thoroughly confused by it. Like I tried reading Dante's Inferno and I could barely understand a word of it. So then I found this summary website. I wish I could remember what it was called. And they like took Dante's words and like added humor and modern slang to it. Like they'd say something like Dante took an entire page and a half just to say it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And it made me laugh so much because I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. I guess people in that time period use a lot of words just to say what would take us one sentence. And it was actually the inspiration for my original Zero Time Dilemma walkthrough, which was not the one I sent you, David. The one that I wrote first, before I wrote anything else, was this very like laugh at the game kind of walkthrough where I just poked fun of the narrative structure of the game, and I said like the graphics were so terrible that even I could, or the actor did such a good job in this scene that I could forgive how terrible the graphics looked. Like it was that kind of humor. If only I could remember the name of the website. And not a whole lot of people liked it, so that's why I reworked it to be a lot more serious. Turns out it's not Shakespeare or scripture. Feast and your halls are crowded, fast and the world goes by. Succeed and give, and it helps you live, but no man. Okay. Yeah, I'm still going to have to think about that unless there's more to it that you just didn't have room for. Ooh, you saw my WarioWare review. Which one? Because I reviewed four WarioWare games, if you count that dreadful WarioWare Gold one. You remember seeing that game for $13? Um. Oh, WarioWare Mega Part. I'm glad someone saw it because it did terrible reviews wise. 2 comments. Okay. As far as the additional peripherals, I don't think you strictly need them. It's more so of if you don't have enough GameCube controllers, you can use a Game Boy Advance and a link cable as an additional controller. But yeah, I remember even before I made the review, my good buddy Tyler from Ty the One Up Guy, he said, "Oh, Paul, you better be careful because you really can't get the most out of WarioWare unless you get those extra accessories." But then I did the research, and his comment didn't make any sense. Because according to what I heard online, all the Game Boy Advance does is it's a second controller. So I'll have to, the next time I talk to him, I'll have to ask what he meant by that. It means people will join in on your joys, but they will not on your sorrows. Oh, okay. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah, now that I think about it, a lot of my friends who are empathetic don't seem to know how to empathize with my problems. Like, they sympathize, but it seems like they might pick up on the fact that I'm sad, but they like won't have empathy in that moment. Maybe it's just because I'm a weirdo. I think they have said that a couple of times. Like, Paul, I'm normally a very um I'm normally a very empathetic person, but around you, you're just a really hard person to read. I've definitely gotten that a few times. Four Swords Adventures and Crystal Chronicles. Oh yes. Oh yes. I remember. Um I actually did have a multiplayer session in Four Swords Adventures one time. My friend and I did happen to have 2 Game Boy Advances and 2 Link cables. And we played through, I think, like 2 levels of it, and then we never finished it. Um, I think I remember having fun, but I think by that point we were kind of over the whole like Zelda multiplayer craze. Because we used to play a ton of the original Four Swords. And by original, I don't mean virtual console. I mean like the Game Boy Advance version, where we had 2 Game Boy Advances and 2 copies of the game, and then the link cable between the two where we had to be in the same room. And we loved that game so much. And then when it came to the DSiWare, I was able to get it for free, thankfully. It was actually the first game I got for my 3DS. And it stunk because it just really did not feel designed for a single player outing whatsoever. It's just a shame I didn't review that one with footage. Although, from what I can tell, a lot of people who were patient with the fact that I didn't have a capture card back then really liked the way I complained about it. Either that or I'm just doing wishful thinking. But Crystal Chronicles, that is a game that I don't think I'll ever play, but I have heard that it's notorious for really being stingy with its multiplayer. The 3DS multiplayer Zelda game, if you're talking about Triforce Heroes, I didn't get past the hub world because the demo, I think, required you to have multiplayer, which I didn't have at the time. And I don't think they let you do online multiplayer. So I ended up just exploring that first town and called it a day. It seems like the kind of game that might be fun if I had the right group of people to play it with. But at the same time, it's probably like pretty low on my list of Zelda games I wish I could play. You played it with a college friend. Yeah, it's the best thing that I can say about Triforce Heroes is that it has really like insanely good music. Like I don't think I've ever heard of a Zelda game that just really commits to that style of folk music. And I think that was the inspiration for why Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom experimented with so many different genres. Your Petra videos come out every Wednesday, Q&As come out on Sunday, and shorts. Oh wow. That's cool. Well, nice to know that you got a whole bunch of stuff that I can catch up on. Is that a Triforce pizza shirt? Heck yeah. My sister-in-law got me this for a Christmas. I forget how long ago it was, but it's meant to be this t-shirt is the big 3 for Paulism. Oh, thank you, Noah. I appreciate that. Pizza's my favorite food. Tears of the Kingdom is my favorite video game, which the Triforce is the symbol of Zelda, and blue is my favorite color. So it's blue, Tears of the Kingdom, and pizza. 3 favorites of something, all meshed together into one t-shirt. But yeah, I find it weird that like the Triforce just isn't in Tears of the Kingdom. It's hinted at in Breath of the Wild, but never like elaborated on, which I find is bizarre. Although I have a personal conspiracy theory that Nintendo is trying to retcon the Triforce. I don't have too much to support it. You'd probably be better off looking at Kokiri Theories YouTube channel than mine. A girl that likes Zelda games. Bet you didn't know too many of those existed. But anyway, um, Undertale's on Switch for Switch finally. Good. Oh, I'm so looking forward to hearing your thoughts. It's a pretty short game, so I think you'll be able to get to Deltarune relatively quickly. And keep in mind, Deltarune's first 2 chapters are free. So if you end up not liking those first 2 chapters, you don't have to buy the rest of the game. But if you do decide to buy the rest of the game, it's only $25 for the remaining 5 chapters. But chapters 1 and 2 feel like 2 full games just by themselves. Your wife loves modern Zelda? Cool. You love Undertale? Oh, heck yeah. I mean, I like Deltarune way more than Undertale at this point, but I still think it's a phenomenal game. But anyway, as I was saying about the Triforce, unless you guys have anything you want to add, which again, feel free to interrupt me if you do. But first off, in the Ocarina of Time remake trailer, the only scene that we see is Link sleeping in the bed. And in that scene, Link has the Triforce on the back of his hand. Now you might be thinking, oh, wait a minute, Paul, that's common knowledge. Link is supposed to have the Triforce of Courage. Everyone knows that. The thing is, if you really know your Ocarina of Time lore, which I unfortunately am very familiar with because I replayed Master Quest and you can't skip too much of that dialogue, and it goes by very slowly. Link is not supposed to have the Triforce of Courage until he becomes an adult. Even more so, he didn't even know that he had the Triforce of Courage because he had gauntlets on. So the fact that an ungloved Link already has the Triforce doesn't mesh well with the lore of Ocarina of Time. Second, in Echoes of Wisdom, the Triforce is always called the Prime Energy as opposed to the Triforce. Now, I haven't played a lot of Echoes of Wisdom. I never got past the second dungeon, but from what I've heard, it does seem like there's a little bit of retconning in there. Some people say that the Zelda timeline is nonsense and something Nintendo just made hastily. I think it's a little bit of both. Because it is true that if you look at, I think it was like a 2010 interview that Onoma did with Nintendo Power, which was before the Zelda timeline came out, by the way. He said that there was a file on his computer called Top Secret. And if you look at the context of that, I think it was like, where does Ocarina of Time fit on the Zelda timeline? And something along those lines. So they definitely had a plan for the timeline. And I think, like, over the years, they have retconned certain elements of it. Like, if you look at, like, the Hyrule Encyclopedia, which came after Hyrule Historia, some of the games on the Fallen Hero timeline have switched places. But to be fair, those games have hardly any storyline anyway, so I don't think it matters all that much. It is to a certain extent both. Fun first, consistency second. Yeah, like Four Swords Adventures, like that game just I feel like Nintendo had to put it somewhere and they figured, well, you know what? We have to fit with this pattern that the top-down Zeldas are in the Fallen Hero timeline because top-down Zeldas are stupid. No, I'm just kidding. I love A Link Between Worlds, but still, top-down Zelda games are all in the Fallen Hero timeline. The child timeline is where the realistic-looking Zelda games come from. And the adult timeline is where all the cartoony cel-shaded ones are. And then Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom are kind of in their own universe. But here's the problem. Four Swords Adventures is a top-down Zelda game, and yet it comes after Twilight Princess. Okay. Why? I don't know. There's mentions of Ganondorf in Four Swords Adventures, but again, if you know the lore of Twilight Princess, it seems a bit out of place. Personally, before the Zelda timeline became a regular thing, I was convinced that the Dark World and the Twilight Realm were actually the same thing. Um, but of course, that's since been proven false because it turns out that the Dark World is actually a reflection of the Sacred Realm, whereas the Twilight Realm is like its own world altogether. But I was close. Oh, you like my take about Wind Waker? Nice. Yeah, that's the thing that I try to do whenever I criticize a game is I try to make criticisms that um, aren't just me saying, "Hey, I don't like this game because nostalgia." I have nostalgia for the Wind Waker. It was like one of the first GameCube games I ever had, and I loved it back then. But my opinions changed. Same thing with Ocarina of Time. That was the first Zelda game I ever owned, and I remember being blown away by it when I first played it. Nowadays, the only thing I'm blown away by in Ocarina of Time are the sound effects. Is Twilight Princess? Does that baby really run a store? Yes. I wouldn't say that person is a baby, more so just a really, really short kid that may also be a crossdresser. Twilight Princess is the thing about Twilight Princess that you have to remember is that Nintendo originally wanted to make a direct sequel to Wind Waker, but Nintendo of America said, yeah, Americans didn't take too well to the art style of Wind Waker, so you probably want a more realistic Zelda. But yet, if you play Twilight Princess enough, you can tell that they were like pushing back on that idea and put elements of Twilight Princess in that more cartoony style to like I guess make fun of Nintendo of America. Like a lot of Twilight Princess's character designs are just as weird as the ones in Wind Waker, but people give them more of a pass because they move their mouths in the cutscenes and they actually have feet. You have yet to play Twilight Princess? Well, actually, Twilight Princess is on the queue of games I'll be reviewing pretty soon because I'm currently going through Sonic Frontiers Definitive Edition, and then assuming nothing good comes out in the near future, Twilight Princess will be next. So hopefully you can watch my review. I do have one of the HD version, but I'll be doing the GameCube version next. Is the baby a boy? Yes, very much a boy. Just wears a ribbon on the head and wears a dress. So I don't know, maybe 2006's version of trans representation. I don't know. Sunshine was a game you love. Yeah, same here. I used to love Super Mario Sunshine, but now I can't stand it. Either that or 3D All Stars was just a terrible port. There's one word in English that is plural but turns into a singular word when you add an S. Ooh. Oh, riddle. All right, let's see if I can figure that out. Singular word. I'm probably going to need the answer at some point. Maybe it's a robe. bow is just a fashion statement. I mean, there's nothing in the game that indicates. Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah. Okay. Good one, Noah. I should have known it had something to do with Twilight Princess. There's nothing in the game that indicates that this boy is trans. Like, there's not any dialogue that suggests, like, oh, I want to be more like a girl. If anything, by 2006 standards, um, owning a shop like that was considered a very masculine thing to do. Like, you didn't really have female shopkeepers in Zelda games before that. And if you did, I think they would usually like try to use their feminine charm to sell you stuff. I think Twilight Princess was just a very weird game that wanted to have Wind Waker stuff in it, and they just kind of forced the darkness into it. But no, I really like Twilight Princess quite a lot. I think it's slightly bumped down in my rankings. I think nowadays I would say it's my fourth favorite Zelda game. I think I like A Link Between Worlds slightly better, but still really phenomenal. You have Twilight Princess on the Wii U, even the Wolf Link amiibo version. Oh, heck yeah. You wish you had the GameCube copy. Yeah. Well, thankfully my brother was able to let me borrow the GameCube version, which I don't remember if I like let him have it after I got the Wii U version or what, but Twilight Princess for the GameCube was actually the very first game I ever pre-ordered. So, there's a little bit of a history lesson for you. It's just a shame that it came out a month after the Wii version, so I had to I had to be pretty firm on people who had the Wii version being like, no spoilers. I still have to wait a month for the GameCube version. My brother is a selective gamer. Um, he's not really hardcore like I am, but every now and then he'll play like games with his kids and my other brother's kids. My other brother plays games quite a lot. I wouldn't say he's a collector, but he does really enjoy old school video games. He really loves the old Fire Emblem games. Like he loves Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance. I think his favorite Smash Brothers is Melee. I think he said Double Dash is his favorite Mario Kart, although maybe now it's Mario Kart 8 because I know he's been teaching his daughter how to play it. Um, I, on the other hand, I tend to go for whatever is the most playable as opposed to whatever is the most nostalgic. So, for example, um, when I look back at Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie, I would say Banjo Kazooie is the better game. But if you were to look at something like Super Mario 64 versus Super Mario Odyssey, I would very much prefer Super Mario Odyssey. So, Mario 64 and Banjo Kazooie, I both have an insane amount of nostalgia for. But if you were to get me to choose between the two, I'd much prefer to play Banjo Kazooie. Radiant, you made Chicken Devon? Never even heard of that. What is that? Radiant Dawn is one of your favorites? Heck yeah, that's great. You're not the first person that I know of who played Radiant Dawn first. I know a friend of mine who that was also his introduction to the franchise. And I'm honestly really surprised he put up with it because that game could be really, really hard at times. Yeah, I've beaten the game on easy and normal, but never hard. I think I got to chapter 6 on hard before I realized it was just too insanely complicated. Do I see Micaiah as a Catholic symbol? I had never actually thought of that. If anything, I always thought of the message of Radiant Dawn as kind of an anti-Catholic one, if anything. Like, obviously saying why I think that would probably get into spoilers, but I don't know. I see Radiant Dawn as a phenomenal story, but not a good storyline if you want to like see God in games. Um, I think in general, Fire Emblem games do a pretty terrible job of representing the Christian God, if I'm being honest. Chicken Devon, pronounced Devon, okay, Devon, is a casserole of chicken, broccoli, cream of chicken, and cheese and bread topping. Okay, very nice. Doesn't sound like something I'd like because broccoli I'm not the biggest fan of, but everything else sounds great. Maybe I'll have to bring that up sometime. Next time I go to a restaurant, say chicken divan, but without the broccoli. But I really hope that there comes a day when Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance get like a 2-pack re-release where the games can the games can be experienced in a way that doesn't require you to spend too much money. Most media does a bad job of depicting God. Yeah, that's true. Except for Harry Potter. I feel like Harry Potter is one of the only stories that I know of that has genuinely really good depictions of Christianity. You wouldn't think that, but again, read all 7 books. All 7 books. Then tell me that Harry Potter is not a Christian series. Imagine you're surprised seeing the Black Knight and Path of... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was pretty... Well, I played Path of Radiance first. So for me, it was kind of the other way around. So for me, I had this really weird tendency that I started out by playing I started out by playing Path of Radiance, then Sacred Stones, then Fire Emblem, and then eventually I got into, I think it was either Shadow Dragon or Radiant Dawn next. And then I played whichever other one I didn't mention. Then I played Awakening, and from there I caught up with the series as it came out. So ever since Awakening, that was like when I was actually catching up with the series. Hopefully not a game key card. Yeah. We can only make analogies and state what he is not. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Are you having a bit of a... I think you're thinking of the wrong game there, David, because Radiant Dawn is the game that reveals the details about the Black Knight, whereas Path of Radiance keeps him as mostly an enigma. I did hear that in the English version of Path of Radiance, they drastically changed some of the lore about the Black Knight, which honestly I kind of find pretty darn cool. The Black Knight fight with Ike and Mist, that's a pretty late game fight, so I hope no one gets mad at you for spoilers of that. But yeah, no, I thought that was pretty cool as well. I think my favorite thing about Path of Radiance is just how well it holds up. Like, it doesn't feel like a game of its time, besides the graphics and the music, in which case it's very much a game of its time. But like, if you were to hypothetically, like, I don't know, give it an HD makeover and have the music performed by a real orchestra, I don't think you'd be able to tell that it came out in 2005. Like, the writing and the gameplay and the level design is just so basically perfect. Not totally perfect. I do think that one snow level with all the birds and the ballistae is an absolute nightmare to play through. Which is why I will never play Path of Radiance on normal or hard. It's because it was hard enough on easy mode. But I do have footage of me playing the first 2 chapters of Path of Radiance on hard. And if you want to see it, you can watch my gushing about Path of Radiance on Switch 2 video or my video complaining about Nintendo Life's Path of Radiance review. Which, if you don't feel like looking at that video, here's the Cliff Notes version. The reviewer had the gall to say that Gallia invaded Crimea and that it was a land full of monsters, which is so funny because, like, the whole point of Path of Radiance's story is that it's a commentary against prejudice and how most people think that Galia is full of monsters, when what they really are Laguz, which are half human, half animal. They are shapeshifters, and they do not like it when people call them Laguz, or derogatory terms like subhumans or monsters. So the fact that he literally put that in the review, and the fact it wasn't Galia that invaded Crimea, it was Dayan. So, like, did he even play the game? Like, why would Ike even go on his quest in the first place? Like, surely if you play the narrative, you know that Dayan is the central antagonist. Then the other thing that I took issue with was the reviewer also said that he found the game to be a bit too easy, which was so vague that I was like, what do you mean by that? Because some of these character recruit methods are like super cryptic. Like, without spoiling anything, there's one character that in order to recruit this person, you have to talk to him with one character and then kill him with another, only for the character to be revived at the end of the chapter, not in that moment. Like, how the heck is anyone genuinely supposed to figure that out? Like, there's nothing in the dialogue that would indicate that you have to do that. Like, obviously, like, I think people could work out that the character that you have to talk to the character with is like okay, yeah, I can see why they would need to talk to each other, but why would you have to kill that character next? Especially with someone else. Like, why wouldn't you just have the same person do it? The sand level? You know, I actually never had trouble with the sand level, but I think it's because if you go to the base and you look at all of the conversation, like the bonus conversations, it tells you that mages and flying units have an advantage. So usually I just let Soren do all the work in that chapter for me, or I'd like have a bunch of Laguz, and then there's like a secret character that you can get if you stand on just the right spot, which I think the game hints at, but it never overtly says it. Um, and then there's the fact that like the boss doesn't move, so if you hit him with ranged attacks, he's literally incapable of fighting back. But the level that I always found hard was, again, to try not to spoil things, the snow level with a bunch of birds, where there's this one bird that you have to get, or you have to talk to him with one character and then have him talk to another character. And then all of a sudden the birds become neutral. Like, again, the game kind of hints at that, but to know that specific order just feels so cryptic. And then there are levels where like the Black Knight will just show up on a random turn. Sometimes it doesn't even make sense where and why he shows up. And so, like, if you happen to not know that, your units are just going to get wiped out because there's no way to defeat him at that point in the game. Yeah, Soren and that one hungry. Oh, Ilyana. How I wish there was more to her character. Do you remember that one? Oh, yeah. No, I loved that forest level. I thought it did a good job of really making the antagonist in that moment feel super annoying and to feel so satisfied when you finally took him down. It was a really nice change of pace because like you really had to like decide, okay, who's going to stick with it for the long run. Now, do I think the game could have done a better job of communicating that it was a gauntlet of fight? Yes. But at the same time, I don't think there's anything in that level design that feels particularly unfair. I don't think I would say Path of Radiance as a whole is a very unfair game. Like, I think by Fire Emblem standards, it's on the easier side. In my personal opinion, I think the easiest Fire Emblem to date is Three Houses. Like, if you play it on easy mode, um, and if you're like even just slightly paying attention to the game's story, you should be able to get it without losing any units permanently because You have so many options on the battlefield. And you also have the Divine Pulse, which lets you rewind. And you're given such a generous amount of them that I think there was genuinely only like maybe one level in all of Three Houses where I genuinely like barely got through, even with all the Divine Pulse charges, especially if you do New Game Plus. Huh, yeah, the maddening mode, because people said it was too easy. Three Houses was such a weird game by Fire Emblem standards because, one, it felt like damage control for Fire Emblem Fates after being way too anime inspired. But second, I feel like that game was almost rushed because it was originally going to be on the 3DS, which explains why the graphics were so bad. But then, like, when they patched it, some of the free stuff that they added felt like really odd oversights. Like, for example, they recast Male Byleth because the guy who played him before was a predator. Why wouldn't you have figured that out before you cast the guy? Unless it was like right after the game came out or something like that. And then there was something else that just felt really shoehorned. Like you couldn't pet the cats without the DLC. I also thought that was super weird. The fruit and yeah, yeah. Three Houses was an eyesore. I remember I remember when Three Houses came out, it came out the same year as Pokemon Sword and Shield. And everyone was saying Pokemon Sword and Shield was so lazy and ugly. And look at all Nintendo's other games. And there were people out there that says, why is no one complaining about Three Houses? That game looks just as ugly as Pokemon Sword and Shield. Um, the thing is, the difference between Three Houses and Sword and Shield was that Three Houses was a competent game. Like, sure, it looked ugly. Sure, it had some performance hiccups, like, things stuttered a lot. But it had so much else going for it that I think people didn't want to complain about it as much because only part of it felt rush as opposed to the entirety of Sword and Shield feeling rush. Like Three Houses to this day still has probably one of the best soundtracks in Nintendo history. Like some of that stuff could be a Hans Zimmer soundtrack. Um, it had like 5 different endings with like an insane amount of lore, a lot of which being optional. The support conversations were all really well written. The voice acting was just incredible. The marketing was wonderful. I actually get this. Um, I actually met both Edelgard actors. You might be thinking, wait, 2 people played Edelgard? If you remember in the initial reveal trailer for Three Houses, it was actually Christina V who was voicing Edelgard at that time. I actually met her. She even said that. She said, yeah, I was originally going to meet voice Edelgard, but then they decided they didn't want me, which makes me wonder if maybe she didn't want to tell the full story, but I didn't bring it up. She brought it up. I was just talking about like, oh, hey, I've seen you in all these games. And she said, yeah, I was also going to be in Three Houses. I'm like, okay, you initiated that, girl, not me. I wasn't prying. Why did she stop? I don't know. In her words, it was because apparently it was an intelligence systems choice that they were the ones that didn't want her anymore. But again, she could just be, trying to fudge her way around an NDA. Maybe she's not allowed to talk about it. Maybe it's personal. Maybe there was some beef between them that she didn't want to talk about. I mean, coming from her perspective, she's going to make the story seem like people are against her. So I just decided don't pursue the topic. Just continue having casual conversation. But I also met Tara Platt, and I got to hear the process behind how she voiced Edelgard, and it was so cool. Like, she struck me as a very step by step type of person. So in psychology, that would be considered a progression person. So you got that narrowed down there. And which really helped me because I'm also a progression person. Like, if you just jump straight to the outcome of a conversation, I am going to be completely lost. So I'm very glad that she said, like, well, first we did this and then we can do that and then we did that. And I'm just like, oh, heck yeah. if you see her performance in Tales of Berseria, you could see how she would voice Edelgard. I'll look up a clip of that. Actually, let me let me capture that and put it in one of my notes so that I can look it up later. All right, got it. Perfect. Thanks for letting me know that. That's pretty cool. Yeah, no, I really like Christina V as well. Like, it's hard to recall what she does that I like off the top of my head. That's like, oh wow, that was an outstanding performance. But she's voiced in some pretty high profile games that I really like. Like, she did Fire Emblem. She did Tears of the Kingdom. Abby Trott is voicing Rise. Ooh, very nice. Unfortunately, Persona 4 has not been announced for a Nintendo system yet, so I won't get my hopes up too much. But the fact that you brought up Abby Trott shows that you were paying attention to my Comic-Con video, because I met Abby Trott as well. Even got a picture with her, which the picture was free, by the way, which really caught me off guard because how do I word this in simple terms? Abby's not really one for interviews, I've noticed. Like, when they were doing their whole marketing campaign for Three Houses, I don't think Abby ever like participated in those a whole lot. I think I might have seen her in a grand total of like one interview ever. So it made me think, okay, maybe she's a really reserved person and she doesn't want to be in the spotlight too much. Then I got to Comic-Con and my opinion of her completely shifted. So first off, I was waiting in line for about, I think like at least 2 to 2.5 hours. And I think a good half hour of that time was being told, oh, Abby's here. She just has to talk to her agent. So it's like, okay, so she's probably the type of person that is not good with time management. Okay. So then Abby actually did show up. She wasn't looking at anyone. And then she was like trying to mess with the glitter glue markers for like signing stuff. And it got me thinking, like, okay, maybe she's a bit focused. Then it came to be my turn. And the very first thing that she said was, she said, oh no, I think I spilled glitter glue all over myself. So I thought to myself, okay, so she's a klutz. So she's probably not much of a concrete person, which that fits with Annette's character very well, actually. Then we started talking. And I revealed that Annette was my favorite character. And the reason why that came up was I asked if like singing Lifelight had any influence on any of Annette's singing roles. And she said not in the slightest, because there's a difference between singing good and singing really bad. And then I and then I think somewhere along there she said like, yeah, why is Annette your favorite character? And I said like, well, I tend to be drawn towards klutzes. And she said, I am a certified klutz. She said, I really resonate with Annette so much because I'm constantly bumping into things. So that got me thinking, okay, so she's probably a bit unaware of her surroundings, so probably a bit low on the in the moment type of personality. And then the final thing that made me really rethink her was when the person who came before me was about to leave her booth. And she called out saying, do you want a selfie? It's free. So I said, whoa. Wait a minute. Shy people typically don't advertise selfies like that. Could it be that Abby Trott is actually an extrovert, but just a shy one? So then it got me thinking, like, I never would have pictured her as that type, but I think she might be an ENFP. And I know that that's like the type that so many people are. And typically, like, when I think someone is an ENFP, it's like, it's usually not what I was thinking they would be. Like, I remember, when I met Jennifer Morrison, I actually was very scared of meeting her. Ooh, and that's your favorite Blue Lions. Same here. Blue Lions was actually my favorite house. And yes, I do like Abby's singing voice. Definitely made Lifelight quite the treat. Like Jennifer Morrison, when I met her, she's the person who plays Emma Swan in Once Upon a Time. I was genuinely terrified of meeting her because I knew she wasn't like exactly like Emma. So I was like, okay, so she's probably like a shy person, maybe a bit gruff, but like maybe not too gruff. Because I remembered I had seen a quote that she did where she said, "I would like my house to feel like a hug." So I was like, okay, so she's probably a nice-ish person, but maybe like a bit standoff, maybe doesn't like her fans all that much. And then I met her, and again, long story short, um, I came to the realization that I was completely wrong about her personality type. I had thought that she would either be an ISTP or an ISFP. Personality database lists her as an ISTJ, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. like like this woman is just all about the performance and the excitement factor. I'm like, no way. ISTJs are terrified of that kind of stuff. Um, But no, I came to the realization no, after watching Jennifer Morrison's panel and meeting her, I think she's an ENFP, which I never would have guessed. I was like, no way. Emma Swan is like the most down to earth, realistic person I've ever met. And ENFPs are like so head in the clouds in La La Land all the time. But no, she fit all the descriptors. She was initiating as heck. Um, Abstract, definitely abstract. Affiliative, constantly talking about the other people in her group and how everything was a collaborative effort. The abstraction, she kept talking about light and darkness, but not in like the literal sense. Like she would say, everyone has bits of dark and light to them. So I tried to portray the shadows. I'm like, yeah, concrete person wouldn't talk like that. Initiating, like I think one of the moderators had to tell her not to talk so much to the audience at her panel because she kept asking this little girl a whole bunch of questions. Um, Interest, yeah, sounds about right. She seems like she's an person by person thing. What was one of her prominent roles? Emma Swan from Once Upon a Time. That's how I knew her. Um, she was also in Lost and House MD. I don't know her personally from anything else. But let's just say that when I first met her, before I saw her at her panel, the first words that came into my head were, you know what? She kind of reminds me of Snow White, like, which was not at all what I was expecting her to be. But I said, yeah, she seems more like Snow White than Snow White does. And then I went to the panel and I'm like, yeah, she's an ENFP. She's just way more easygoing, way more friendly. Um, Definitely an extroverted thinker. So she's always talking about the sources of everything. Like when she was doing House MD, she had to like do all the research. I'm like, okay, so she gets logic outside of herself. Um, Constantly blurting out her emotions. It's like, yep, introverted feeling parent. Um, Constantly the overwhelming thing that I got from Jennifer Morrison, which was something that, in my opinion, defines her as a person, not as an actor, but as a person, is this woman is insanely, insanely, insanely progression oriented. Constantly, 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 more than anything else, was talking about the process. Everything's a process. It was just the next step in the process. And then I watched another interview of her, and she said it even more. She kept going on and on about the process. And at one point, she flat out confirmed that she was a journey over the destination person. She said, yeah, I'm always more about the journey than the outcome. And I'm just like, called it. An ISFP would not say that. Neither would an INFP, so therefore she's an ENFP. Again, never would have expected that coming from her, but it all fit. It all came together really nicely. Sorry, guys, I'm a psych nerd, but I'll shut up now. That was supposed to be my embarrassed face. But yeah, no, I had a blast at Comic Con. Have any of you guys ever been to Comic Con? I would say if you have a chance, please try to go. Oh, good. I'm glad you thought it was a good listen because you'd be surprised how many people do not like me talking about psychology. Um, I've actually been really trying not to talk about it as much. Um, and if I do, I try to like not use the technicality terms. Like I remember when I was at VBS, someone talked about concrete. And I said, like, oh, yeah, in psychology, there's a term that's called being concrete. And then the person said, oh, yeah, isn't the opposite of that abstract? So instead of talking about sensing and intuition, we talked about concrete and abstraction. So that was more of the like dummy terms. You met Johnny Yang Bosch. Very, very nice. You know what? I almost met Johnny Yang Bosch, but the line was just way too long. He was right next to Stephanie Shea, which I did get to meet her, and I did get a picture with her. But Johnny's, like I said, he was right there. I could see him talking to people. I could practically touch him, but I said, no, no, he's on my lower end of priorities of people to meet. But that is super cool that he signed your copy. I'm not much of an autograph person myself, but I just think I think it's neat that like people can give so much joy by just writing down a name. I used to be really into autographs, but then I sort of got out of that cuz I realized that it could come across as weird if I constantly just asked everyone for their autographs. Because I like to ask anyone that I was like even remotely getting along with for autographs. Like I didn't reserve it to just celebrities. Like I would go to a conference, I'd ask the adult chaperones for autographs. I'd ask the people that worked on the conference for autographs. I'd ask the teenagers. I asked everyone and anyone. And then later on I realized, yeah, no, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But I don't think anyone ever complained, so that's good. You don't ask unless it's specified. Oh yeah, because Comic Con advertises that you can pay for autographs. Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of Johnny Young Bosch, it's actually confirmed that he is going to be returning for Danganronpa 2x2. In fact, the entire English cast is returning. Um, I don't know if he's returning for Persona 4, though. Considering what they did with Persona 3 Reload, where most of the original actors played different characters, except for Tara Platt. She apparently still sounded good enough where she could just reprise her role as Elizabeth, but literally every single other role was given to someone else. Like, sure, Yuri Lowenthal originally played Makoto, and then he still was in Persona 3 Reload. He was just a different character. So that's why I'm thinking for Persona 4, they'll probably do the same thing. He got replaced in Persona 4 Revival. I figured as much. Now, if they replace Matt Mercer as whoever he played, uh, there's going to be some fighting words, let's just say. But speaking of Matt Mercer, I have a really incredible story about him. So he does voices in both Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, probably also Revelation, but I didn't watch the trailer. Um, in Final Fantasy VII Remake, he was just an extra. And then for Rebirth, when he was doing the audition, he actually wanted to do Vincent Valentine because he had cosplayed as Vincent before. And he said that he was such a nerd of Final Fantasy VII that he was super excited just to be on the project to begin with. And then when they were doing the audition for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they said, yeah, Matt, we just need you to come in and you're going to be an extra, so just fill in a couple of roles. And he looked kind of defeated. And again, all this is on video too. So you could just look up when Matt Mercer found out who he was playing. But he said like, yeah, all right. So then they said, all right, let's get your lines for you. And then the screen looked like it was having a crash and it said, oh no, what's going on with the computer? And then it showed an image of Matt's face. And then the next thing said, who will Matt play in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? And then it showed Vincent Valentine. And Matt said, you gotta be beeping kidding me. And so it turned out that they knew that that was his dream character. And he got to play Vincent all along. So I just felt so happy for him, especially because Vincent didn't get that much screen time. So I feel like Matt will feel so much happier in Revelation because, um, from what I've heard, Vincent has much more of a role to play in the later parts of Final Fantasy VII. He didn't come back for Kanji. That is a shame. But I think they also did that on purpose because, again, like Persona 3 Reload, they just wanted younger sounding actors for the roles. Yeah, you know what? From what I know about Mitsuru, Allegra Clark does actually sound like she would be a better fit than Tara Platt. He is young and perfect for Kanji. Is he young? I could have sworn he's in his like 40s by now. I mean, he played Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom, and he put on a pretty gruff voice for that. So I'm wondering if they're transitioning him into more of like older sounding roles. All right, looking him up. First thing it shows on IMDb is that he was in Thundercats. That's a choice. He was born in 1982. So that would make him, let's see, 92, 2002, 2022. He would be 36, I think. Not 36. Oh, because I forgot 2012. He'd be 46. There you go. Yeah, so maybe they think 46 is just a little bit too old for the role. But Matt is one of those legendary voice actors where his voice just doesn't seem to have changed a bit in all these years. Like, you look at his original performance of Chrom in Fire Emblem Awakening, and then you look at how he played Chrom in Fire Emblem Engage. Those games came out like 10 years apart, and he sounds practically indistinguishable. Now, I think he does sound slightly off because they also had him play other characters in Fire Emblem Fate, such as Ryoji, I think his name was. So it's possible that because he had to play so many characters in Fates that it was hard for him to get back into character. But I feel like he still sounds like Matt Mercer in whatever he does. But he is actually my number one celebrity that I want to meet the most. If you were to tell me Matt Mercer was going to Comic-Con, I'd find a way to get there probably. That would be so cool. Speaking of the original Persona 4 cast, is Yuri Lowenthal not going to be what's his name, Yosuke anymore? Because I know he was replaced in Persona 3 Reload as well. Danganronpa 2x2 got delayed. Yeah. We should have realized it was coming, but I think a lot of us wanted to believe that it was how do I word this? I think a lot of us wanted to believe that it was going to be a summer release because it's such a summery game. Who was heartbroken, Yuri Lowenthal or Matt Mercer? I have actually joked around with a couple of people that I'm like the younger Matt Mercer. He begged to be let back into the role, but they didn't give him a chance to audition. Again, who are we talking about? Because I think I said that for both Yuri Lowenthal and Matt Mercer. Um, I feel like that might have hit Yuri Lowenthal. Oh, yeah. That's a shame. That's a real shame. What was I going to say? Yeah, I used to joke around with people that I was like, ooh, he even went on Blue Sky. Dang, that's a real shame. Maybe they felt like his voice had changed too much because the original Persona 3 came out in like 2007, I think. And going from 2007 to 2024, I think was when Reload came out. That's a pretty long time in actor years. They probably figure your voice better sound exactly like a teenager's. Um, what was I going to say? Didn't stop them from having Charles Martinet be the voice of Mario for about 30 years. Because he started voicing Oh, that reminds me. I hope you guys will look up. Oh, Aaron Fitzgerald was. Oh, that's a real shame. Ooh, looking forward to it, Noah. I'm super excited. Let's hope that let's hope that I'm able to understand what you're saying, because again, that kind of it is so therefore it is type of reasoning is um I don't normally think like that, but hey, if it brings people to Christ, then all the better. I'm more of a let's look at the facts as opposed to trying to figure out why something is true. But I've been told I'm not too shabby at coming to logical conclusions if need be. She voiced Emerin. Yes, I did. I understand introverted thinking. That doesn't mean I use it a whole lot. Um, I understood what you were getting at in that video, but I still couldn't stop myself from laughing because not like in a oh you're being stupid way. More so, this is very different from how I talk kind of way. Because like, um, how would I describe something similar? Like for example, if I were to try to prove that gravity was real, and yes, I did know she voiced Emerin. Shame she got recast in Fire Emblem Heroes. The way that I would explain that something is true is I would do an experiment or some kind of documentation that shows that something is objective. So, for example, if someone asked me to say, why do you believe gravity exists? Then I'd say, because if you jump off of a tree, you hit the ground. God has made a diverse array of creation for his glory. Different modes of thought are beautiful. Yes, they are. And the reason why I think that is because I think if everyone thought the same, then we wouldn't really understand the world all that well. Because if everyone thought like me, there would be no one to challenge the preconceived notions. Like, I'm sure at one point, people like me would have said, space travel is impossible because the gravitational pull is just too much. How do you stop yourself from falling out of a tree? And so I'm sure someone out there had to say, well, can you really say that you're always going to fall out of a tree? What if there's a way to defy gravity? And so that person probably invented the rocket ship. Scientific reasoning and its foundation in philosophy. Ooh, that's going to be a tough one because I generally have a hard time understanding philosophy, but I will try my best. You try to watch my videos, I will try my darndest to watch yours. It's a give and take in the world. But I've been told that even though I don't like philosophy, like philosophical people tend to be really thrown off um, by what I have to say about it. Because there was one time I went to a philosophy meeting, and I was the only person there that didn't like philosophy. But I was trying to be open minded. I was like, all right, I'll see what happens. And they kept asking why for every little thing. And I think like the thing that I said that made everyone else mad, except for one person. There was one person who said, "Paul, I liked what you had to say." I said, "Does it actually genuinely matter why 2 plus 2 equals 4? Like, obviously it does. Like, if you have two here, it's 4. Like, you can't really deny that. Why does it matter if we know it? Like, is that going to cause any earth-shattering revelations?" They looked at me like I was an idiot, except for one person who said, Paul, because we are so busy thinking about this stuff all the time, we never realized if there was a purpose for behind why we would seek these answers. And so he said, you really challenged us in that mode or in that moment. And I was like, oh wow, never thought I'd see the day when someone would compliment me on saying something in a philosophical manner. It does cause revelations. Like what? I guess like Trinitarian theology would use pretty inductive reasoning. Yeah, yeah, I could see that. I know St. Thomas Aquinas was a very introverted thinking type of person. I think he was probably an INTP because he definitely exhibited blind spot extroverted thinking, or not extroverted thinking, extroverted sensing. Because it said that he would like get so lost in thought that the other friars would have to like pull the butter away from him as he would put his elbow on the table. So INTPs, they like to think about why things work and what could happen as a result of that, and then they just completely forget about reality in the process. The idea that math corresponds to the physical world shows that there is order in our universe and not just godless chaos. Well, you know what? That's fair. I can get behind that. I don't know if I would have come to that conclusion by myself, but I think that's a pretty neat way of explaining things. Now, usually when I try to explain to people why God exists, it's typically more so personal experience. Like I usually in an atheistic framework, there's no reason to think math has to correspond with reality. Why not 2 plus 2 equals 5? Uh, sorry, you lost me there. Um, I'm not really sure what the why there's no reason to think math has to correspond with reality. Sorry, you lost me. I'm so sorry. I'm trying, but I tend to be more of a realist. So usually when I try to talk about God being real, I talk about personal experiences with him, and I try to describe the sensations and the context of the time period and stuff that's more like rooted in the concrete world. So, for example, when I'm trying to prove to people that the Eucharist is real, the argument that I would give, which you're probably going to laugh at yourself, um, is that in 2018, when I went on my one of my mission trips, the priest put out the monstrance with the consecrated host in it. And he put the two pieces of cloth that that he uses to clean out the vessels for communion. And he said, if that's Jesus, then those are his clothes. So touch them just like the woman with hemorrhages did, and you will be healed. So I did, and I kissed the cloth, and maybe like 3 seconds later, you guys know the story of what happened next. Um, Felt like tea was running down my neck. Then it spread to my shoulders and back. Then it changed to more of just this warmth. And then my back and shoulders were healed. So now I tell people, okay, well, let's say that God wasn't real. If God wasn't real, then why would I be healed by kissing that napkin? Do napkins have healing powers? And why was it the placement of the napkin? Because I could have kissed a piece of cloth anytime, but it was that particular night after the priest had told the story, and it was the Catholic priesthood that consecrated that host. So Based on that, I don't see any way that that could disprove the Eucharist being real. And of course, I'm sure there are people out there that'll argue the principle about that, saying, like, oh, well, maybe it was a cerebral effect. Like maybe you just imagined it. And I'd say, well, I am not the only person that has had these experiences. There are actually people out there that have had even crazier miraculous healings than me. And I think that if people were really willing to do the research and actually look into all these other miraculous healings, I think there would be way more reason to believe that the Eucharist was real. I think people just don't want to believe it's real. What's a whatever that word you said? What's that kind of miracle? Like I've never heard of that term before. The miracle of the sun from Our Lady of Fatima proves Catholicism all at once. Does it? I mean, I know it proves that miracles can happen after Jesus' time, and that the Blessed Mother definitely has power to intercede for us. But all of Catholicism, I'd have to think about that. Again, going back to VBS, that miracle is a miracle that vindicates a claim, meaning it proves if it is real. Yeah, the claim that this napkin will heal you. I kissed the napkin, then I was healed. I didn't question it. I didn't say, well, I don't know, Father, you could be reaching at straws here. I just completely accepted it and I was healed. And the other ironic thing is one atheist tried to argue, well, Paul, it was just in your head that you wanted to be cured. And because you thought about it enough, it happened. So my counter argument, which the atheist couldn't actually disprove, was I said, well, what I actually asked for. Oh, okay, well, if we don't see you around, Lodo, I hope you have a great rest of whatever you're doing. Our Lady of Fatima proves that God exists because miracle, that Jesus is God because of how Mary is presented, and that the Catholic Church is his church because of how Mary speaks of the church. I'd have to think about that one again, too. Cleaning. It depends on the cleaning. For me, cleaning is not fun if there's dust. I'll take your word for it because I'm still having to think about that. Um, but the atheist claimed that it was all in my head. That oh, you were just thinking about wanting your back and shoulders cleared, so therefore it was a placebo effect. To which I responded, actually, I wasn't. I actually asked God for two things that weren't related to my back and shoulders at all. I actually asked God if I could have my face blindness removed, which did not happen. I kept forgetting the faces of people on that same trip. I then asked if my girlfriend and I could be back together. That didn't happen because we broke up the day after the trip. But what did happen was he provided a physical healing. It wasn't the physical healing that I asked for, but it was a physical healing that came forth after I asked for one. So it goes to show you that God answers prayers, but not always in the way we expect. I have face blindness. I don't know if I have an official diagnosis of it because I have been getting better over the years, but in general, I have a really hard time remembering people's faces. Like for a while, I had a crush on this girl a long time ago, and for a while, I did not remember what her face looked like for the life of me. I remember one time I was waiting for her to like go to church with her together, and she didn't know that I would be there waiting for her. So she literally walked right past me, and I didn't notice that it was her. And so later on, I said, "Oh shoot, she's late. I guess I better just go to church." And then I saw her in church and I was like, wait, what? How could she have walked past me? And I said, oh, shoot, she probably did walk past me. She just didn't see me and I didn't notice that it was her. There was another time I was at a dance and this girl said hi to me and I said, oh, hello, nice to meet you. I'm Paul. And she said, Paul, I'm your sister. What the heck? That's happened twice, by the way. There was another time that I was chaperoning an event and one of the teenage girls said, oh, hi, Paul. And I said, hey, nice to meet you. The name's Paul. How's it going? And she said, Paul, you're my adult leader. Shouldn't you know who I am by now? Then there was yet another time when I was talking to this girl at a conference that was sitting on my left side, and she was listening to all these stories about like how I had gotten out of depression. And then at one point she had to go, and I said, see you later. But then she got back to where I was and sat on my right side. And I said, oh, hello. Did you want to hear the stories as well? And she said, Paul, I was just sitting on your other side. What are you talking about? So on several occasions, I have just had an absolutely terrible time recalling people's faces. And in general, I would say that that's the last thing I focus on when I look at people. I would say usually for me, the first thing that I notice when it comes to people, for men, I would say it's their hair. For women, probably shoulders. I think shoulders is a big thing for me because I remember when I was yeah, no, it's a pretty the neck it when Lodo, aka David, comes back, um, ask him about the face blindness moment in 999, and he'll tell you a really cool example of how they gave a cool analogy for the average person. What was I going to say? I forgot what I was going with before that. Oh well. I am going to have to wrap it up pretty soon because my voice is getting really sore from talking so much. Turned out my overseas friends didn't show up, so I guess only you guys won. What was I saying? Something about conferences. Amen. Amen to what? That I was healed of depression? Hmm. Oh well. All right. I think I'm going to call it here. Just because I've got to hang out with a friend tomorrow and I don't want to have a sore voice when I'm talking to him. But let's do our usual. Your winner since you got the stream. Yeah, heck yeah. All right. DK would be an Eastern Christian. Interesting. Well, welcome in, Aaron. It's a real shame. It's a real shame because my throat is kind of sore, so I'm about to wrap it up. But hopefully you can come to my streams in the future. I've been YouTubing for 13 years, so I have a humongous backlog. So if you want to catch up on past streams and past videos, yeah, thanks for coming by as quickly as you did. Yeah, got lots of stuff for you. So anyway, thank you, Aaron, as short-lived as it was. Thank you, Noah. Thank you, David. And actually, I think, oh, and Jungle Running. You didn't say much, but you still showed up, so you still get a shout out. All right, well, you guys have a good rest of your day. First time commenter. Very, very nice. We don't talk about the meme around here, but hey, if you can like me for other stuff, super cool. All right, well, before my voice completely goes out, you all have a wonderful day, everyone. And until the next time, remember to keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.